Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our parent information session for the blended virtual program. We're really excited to be able to offer this option. I know you've had a chance to hear a little bit about it in the invitation you received. One of the most important parts of this is if we're able to design this really robust virtual school, and this team has done just such an amazing job preparing for this. As we've indicated before, that will allow us to have our other 53 schools focus entirely on in-person learning, which is really our greatest goal for the fall. With that said, I feel like we are helping to lead the state in these efforts. We've had actually very good feedback from the State Department on this program. They approved this program just in the last day, so we're very excited to see this moving forward. What you're going to hear tonight is about the fully virtual option, which we're offering to families for the fall, and you're going to hear a lot of details about that. We also have a blended program, which would have students come in for 1 or 2 days a week and then have the rest of their week be virtual. And then, of course, you have the in-person option, which is what we are setting up for our remaining 53 schools. So you're going to get to hear all the details about that tonight. And so one thing we do ask of you is, it's hard to make a decision about this. It's a lot to think about. Everything has been really in so much kind of turmoil for the last year, that if we can get ahead of this and we can start to have a sense of our community, how many folks will be interested in choosing these different options, having that information will dramatically improve our ability to create the very best program for the students who are there. We have the framework in place. Now it's a function of knowing how many people we're planning for. So I'm so glad we have nearly 240 people here already, and I suspect we'll see some more, but at this time I would like to turn it over to our team. Mr. O'Brien, would you like to take it from here?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of Middle and High Schools. It is my pleasure to introduce two people who have been instrumental in creating this option for parents and students. First is Rob DeLeva. He's the principal of our Center for Educational Opportunity. Also, Ms. Becky Pincero, our coordinator of e-learning. I'd like to hand it over to them at this time.
Great, thank you, Dr. Bolson and Mr. O'Brien. Good evening, parents and guardians, and welcome to the 2021-2022 Blended Virtual Programs Parent Informational Session. As Mr. O'Brien had mentioned, I'm Becky Pincero, coordinator of e-learning, and presenting with me tonight is Mr. Rob DeLeva, the principal at the Alternative Education Center.
Good evening, everybody, and you'll be hearing from both Ms. Pincero and I quite a bit, and among others that are here tonight.
So to get started, as Dr. Bolson had mentioned, next year we're going to be focusing on our in-person instruction for 53 of our 54 schools, and we'll also be providing a centralized blended virtual learning program at our other 54th school. And that's going to be held at the Center for Educational Opportunity. The chart listed here outlines each of the 3 options that Harford County Public School plans to offer next school year. So in the first column, the traditional school models for students in grades pre-K through 12, which will be in person 5 days a week at your child's districted or home school. Students enrolled in the traditional school program will receive in-person instruction from Harford County Public School teachers, and the traditional program will offer the traditional programs of studies that are offered during a typical school year. The blended virtual in-person program is for students in grades 6 through 12 and will be conducted in a cohort style model, meaning that the students enrolled in this program will attend in-person instruction 2 days a week. They'll complete asynchronous instruction for 2 days a week, and then they'll receive additional academic and student support services the remaining 1 day a week. Students enrolled in the blended in-person program will report to the Center for Educational Opportunities. Students will receive both in-person as well as asynchronous instruction from a Harford County Public Schools certified teacher. Within this program, core academic level courses and limited electives and related arts will be available to students. The blended virtual program from home, which is our last column, or otherwise known as an e-learning program, will be available to students in grades K through 12. This program will be conducted in a virtual setting where students follow a daily bell-to-bell schedule. Students in this program will receive instruction from a certified Harford County Public School teacher as well. Within this program, just as the in-person program, core academic level courses and limited electives and related arts would be available. It's important to note here as well that all three of the options listed here will follow the approved Harford County Public Schools academic calendar. So one of the big questions that we've received is, what is a blended virtual program? So a blended virtual program is defined as, excuse me, a combination of asynchronous and scheduled synchronous teaching and learning, which is provided by a local school system. And as you heard on the previous slide, the scheduled synchronous instruction can happen either in person from option 2 in our blended in-person program, or it can be conducted through a web conferencing tool such as Microsoft Teams from a student's home. So that's what makes it blended, is that there's a combination of the synchronous with some asynchronous work involved, or asynchronous instruction. For the purpose of today's meeting, we're going to focus on the K-12 blended virtual program from home. But we know that after we've presented the information for the in-person blended virtual option, that you may have some additional questions. So if you have any additional questions regarding the blended virtual in-person program for 6 through 12, please contact Mr. Rob DeLeva or Mr. Zach Lovelace at the Center for Educational Opportunity. I'm going to leave this slide up just for a minute in case you wanted to jot down their names, their emails, or that phone number to find out more information regarding the in-person blended virtual program. Okay, so for tonight's session, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the e-learning or the blended virtual program from home for our students in grades K through 12. We've organized our session this evening into 4 main topics: the e-learning program overview, what a typical student day would look like for your child, the student-parent responsibilities, as well as what the application process will be for the e-learning program. We're going to end this evening's session with opening our Q&A dialogue box for you to ask our panel any additional questions that you may have throughout the presentation. Our panel this evening will consist of our elementary and secondary executive directors, Ms. Renee Villarreal and Mr. Mike O'Brien. Our Director of Secondary Schools, Mr. Colin Carr. The Executive Director of Student Services, Mr. Buck Hennigan. The Executive Director of Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment, Dr. Susan Brown. The Director of Special Education, Mr. Mike Thatcher. And the entire blended virtual program administrative staff, which Mr. DeLeva will introduce to you shortly. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeLeva so he can dive a little bit deeper into the logistics around the e-learning program for students in grades K through 12.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pincero. So on this slide that you'll see, this is just a very quick glance at all 3 levels of the e-learning blended virtual program for K through 12. So just a couple things with that. The instructional staff for this program, it will be a different staff from our in-person blended virtual program that already exists. They are 2 different programs and they are running concurrently from the same building under one school name. There is an administrative staff for this program as well. The newest addition is to the elementary school, and that is Miss Beth Farver. She will officially begin in that role on April 12, very soon here. Also at the secondary level, assistant principal is Mr. Zach Lovelace. And then working with all levels and components of the program are myself, the coordinator of e-learning, Miss Becky Pincero, who's been speaking with you there, our pupil personnel worker, Mr. Joe DiBasilio, and then we also have our community school specialist, Mr. Evan Shawley. As you're looking at this chart, just a couple quick things before we get into the very specifics. Usually at the high school level, we get quite a few questions. You'll see that it is listed there that there are no interscholastic sports, but however, we will at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high, we'll be offering clubs, activities, social events, PTSA events, and so on. And then another common question that we typically get at the high school level is, what courses will the high school offer? And we will get into that much more specifically in a little bit. But similar to other high schools, we will not be able to offer the exact same course list that every high school does. especially with courses specific to specialized programs like those that you see at the, the Global Studies IB program, the Ag Science program up at North Hartford High, SMA at Aberdeen High. I mean, we have so many programs. The IT Oracle program, the new one there at Havre de Grace, Hartford Tech, you have P-Tech at Jobtown. I could go on. There's the specialized programs. We won't be able to offer those specific courses through this e-learning program. From here, though, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the elementary level and see what a typical day would look like there. So when you look at this, it seems there's a lot there, and we'll go through this slowly just to give you an idea of what it is you're looking at. Each level, again, we're starting with the elementary here, they will run the same times that their respective peer schools do within the county. And all three levels will have lunch scheduled at the same time, 11:30 to 12:10, and that's with the idea that you could have siblings at different levels in the same program. So this should hopefully help with that. With the elementary, you'll see during instruction time, the teacher will build in individualized instruction. They'll do that through the PLT time, personal learning time that we've built into it, the use of breakout rooms, and within the course, allocation or time allocations there, the time is going to be built in by the teachers to vary the amount of screen time that students would have. And just so you understand as well, when we have math, RELA, or literal or unified arts, literature written down there, not every grade will follow that same exact order. These are just the course or the classes that they'll have. What you'll see in the next slide is how they would all function at the same time. Very similar to what you'd see at any elementary school, where there's a rotation through of classes. So you can just look at that for a quick second. But again, you'll see also lunch at the same time for all the grade levels there at the elementary level, in addition to the middle and the high school, which you'll see in a little bit. Okay, moving on to the next slide, you'll see this is where we just list the courses offered. For elementary, again, you've seen that now listed a couple times in the previous two slides. But with middle school, and we'll look at what a typical day at middle school looks like in a second, these are the courses that we'll be starting with for the middle school option. And from there, if we look at what a typical day in middle school would look like, you can see again that the times will mirror what the middle schools throughout the county run on. And you'll see we have also built in that personal learning time from 11 to 11:30, and then we also have the option to use that during periods 5 and 6, depending on what a student's schedule actually looks like in regards to the other courses that they're taking. Specials would alternate on a quarter and grade level basis at the middle school level as well. All right, so moving on to high school and what a typical day would look like there. You'll see again, start time similar to all the other high schools within the county. Again, personal learning time periods built in. Again, these can be used for a variety of things. We have it listed there. I can read it to you. Anything from office hours with students, additional IEP accommodation time, time for students to meet with counselors, enrichment opportunities within that time period, or even just time for some daily asynchronous work for the student. The high school schedule will follow the HCPS AB rotational schedule that all the other high schools run on currently, which would mean Mondays and Wednesdays would be A days, Tuesdays and Thursdays would be B days, and on Friday, that's where there's the rotation of the A and B day. So there'd be a schedule published at the beginning of the school year, and that would be the schedule that would be followed. They are year-long courses, and students in the high school can earn up to 8 credits per year. If they're a senior with us and they've met all their graduation requirements, they will receive a diploma from our school. And students will also, if they meet the requirements, they could also apply for part-time status and also take advantage of the dual enrollment options that we have with HCC. And here's a list of courses that we'll be starting with. And again, I just want to reiterate what I'd said earlier. Similar to other high schools, we're not able to offer the same exact course list that every high school has. And courses specific to the specialized programs that Harford County Public Schools does offer, we're not going to be able to offer those through the e-learning option. Those are specific to those schools and those teachers at those schools. And speaking of teachers, the teachers that we have, they are HCPS teachers. They work in our buildings. So if it's ever a time where you need to meet with your teacher, whether it be virtually or in person, you would actually come to our building and you could meet, conference with your child's teacher here. So in regards to application, that is something that Ms. Pensero will explain that timeline.
Great, thanks, Mr. Villava. So moving forward, we've had a chance to take a look at what a typical student day looks like, what some of the course offerings would be, and a brief overview of both of our programs. Next Tuesday, on April the 6th, the student applications will be going live on the HCPS website. Ms. Jillian later will send an email that morning of April the 6th with a direct link to our website, followed by a call to families in the evening, allowing you to know that that application has gone live. We're asking that applications that are received prior to April the 20th will be given priority in the review process. So I know a lot of the discussion through the other slides and course offerings and things like that do depend on enrollment. So we're going to take a look at first enrollments by April the 20th. Those applications will be reviewed and families will be notified of acceptance by June the 1st. So look out for that phone call on April the 6th with more information to fill out the student application for the program. Within the student application, you're going to find registration guidelines. So I'm just going to briefly hit on some of the points in the registration guidelines. So students will need to enroll at the Center for Educational Opportunity to participate in either of the blended virtual programs, the in-person as well as from home. Students will be expected to remain enrolled in the blended virtual program from home for at least a full semester. Students will be expected to adhere to the instructional schedule, as Mr. DeLeva had reviewed. Applications will be screened to ensure that the virtual option is an appropriate placement for each student. And finally, students are required to meet the attendance and academic requirements as well as behavioral expectations. Failure to adhere to any of these requirements may lead to the removal from the blended virtual program from home, and students would be placed back in the brick and mortar building. Upon completion of the blended virtual from home application, and once the approvals have been sent or the acceptances have been sent, students and parents will be invited to attend a required orientation session where the student and parent responsibilities agreement will be distributed. So today I'm going to outline some key components of that document as well to review with you, as it may answer some of the questions that you're thinking of. This student-parent agreement has been vetted through the Risk Management Office, and HCPS leadership has stressed that students enrolled in this program will be held to the same standard as any other academic program that we do offer in Harford County Public Schools. So the first section here is in regards to attendance. So students must attend all of the synchronous sessions that have been outlined in their schedule. Students are required to log into the attendance app daily. If students are absent for whatever reason, the appropriate documentation must be submitted. Because this is a virtual program from home, we will accept those via email. Excessive truancy and absences will lead to additional interventions that again can lead students being placed back at their home school. The academic responsibilities, students are required to submit work that is completed by them. Work for the week must be submitted no later than Saturday at midnight for that week. Students who are not demonstrating success will again receive interventions that may include the return to their home school or brick and mortar setting. Grading will be based on the HCPS grading guidelines, just as they are in all other 53 schools. Students will be required to participate in all statewide assessments, county level assessments, as well as end of course exams. Student requirements, we went over a few of these already, but students will remain enrolled in the program for a minimum of 1 semester. Students will receive an HCPS device. We're going to ask that students choose a quiet place to work and display an appropriate background. And finally, active participation is required by students. And that's going to include, but not limited to, class discussions, camera use, daily participation with teacher and peers. And I think they all know this by now, is to, mute their microphones when they are prompted to do so. And finally, the parent and guardian expectations. We're asking that parents and guardians provide consistent internet access, assist students in complying with HCPS policies and procedures, encourage active participation from your child, ensure that all student work is completed by the student, actively communicate with your child's teacher as well as the entire blended virtual from home staff. Parents may not record, duplicate, or share any portions of the virtual instruction. And finally, we ask that parents do not share passwords or provide outside access to HCPS services. So upon completion of the application, as I mentioned, there will be an orientation session that we will be able to provide more details in regards to specific student schedules, as well as review all of the responsibilities and requirements of students. So at this time, we are going to open up our Q&A dialogue box, and we're going to allow you to ask any questions that you still may have after listening to our presentation tonight.
All right, and with that, we have a special guest with us tonight to help moderate. We were having some Q&A issues here. So Ms. Jillian Later has actually joined us, and she's going to help us moderate through with these. So thank you, Ms. Later, for helping us out.
Oh, good evening. It is my pleasure. And so I am just going to start at the top of the list and work my way down. So the first question comes from Mr. Greg Stifler. He asks, blended in-person days won't be at a Harford County Public School. Where is the CEO again? So if we can just remind everyone where the CEO is located. And that actually, it is an HCPS school.
Yes, it is. And actually more people in the county are getting to know where we're at, because we're also serving as a vaccination center right now. So there's about 1,600 people a day coming through. We're located at 253 Paradise Road. We're actually right next to Aberdeen High School. We share a parking lot. If you have a younger student at home currently and you ask them if they've gone to the planetarium, there's 2 planetariums in the county, and one of them is actually out of our building. They might be able to tell you exactly where we're at. So hopefully that description helps.
And on to the next question, because they're coming in faster now. A second question from Mr. Stifler. Are students allowed to jump programs? For example, if they start in blended, could they switch to full in-person?
With the initial registration, we are asking for minimum of 1 semester commitment to the, if you're going to the e-learning from home option. Again, staffing is dependent upon that registration, and we need to make sure that we're adequately staffed.
All right, and our next question is about with colleges. Will they know if a student did in-person versus blended or a virtual curriculum that someone completed? How do you report that to colleges? In other words, if they will it look the same as if they attended in person?
It's an HCPS course that will be listed as that. And again, our diploma it'll have our school name on it. It won't say e-learning program. It'll just say the name of our school, which is still hasn't been finalized. The Board of Ed did in February put that as a motion to look into renaming the school.
And just to add or to piggyback onto that, all of the curriculum that will be used in all 3 of our options is HCPS curriculum. We are not using an outside vendor. So the courses are not considered online courses because the students are completing a certain percentage of that with live instruction. And that's another point of what makes this a blended program, is that these are not fully online courses because there is that component of the synchronous instruction. So these courses will not be listed on a student transcript as an online course. They're receiving the instruction in the blended virtual from home. It is just like they're sitting in the classroom. Their location is just different. And I say that loosely, just like sitting in a classroom, but they're still receiving that live instruction. So no, there should not be, colleges will not know the difference.
Okay, and just to give you guys a heads up, we have about 33 questions in the queue. I'm not sure if they're duplicates, but just so you guys keep an eye on your time. So the next question is, will all teachers have the same credentials as an in-person teacher?
Yes. Yeah, they're all certified Maryland HCPS teachers.
Okay, and then the next question is someone asking for clarification. They were questioning, is this in preparation for the next fall wave of COVID and not allowing kids to go virtual unless they enroll? But I think that we've clearly stated that this is not in relation to COVID. This was a virtual program that was in the works even before COVID became our reality.
That is correct.
So the next question, has the blended virtual instruction been enhanced and geared specifically for virtual learning, making it more enriching and engaging?
I'll start by answering with that one. I think that's constantly ongoing. Sorry, my light went out. That's an ongoing task that we're working on. We have professional development throughout the year. This year, also planned for next year. That we will continue to enhance instruction, and just like we would enhance any level of instruction, whether it be virtual or whether it be in person. So.
Okay, so the next question, I'm going to read it word for word because I also came in a little bit late on the meeting, so I'm not quite sure what this is in reference to. It does start saying, thanks for all of your efforts here. We arrived to this meeting right when Dr. Bolson was mentioning that there will be another option where students come in 1 or 2 days a week. Could you expand on how this would work and which grades would be eligible for this option? Right,
that's strictly for grades 6 through 12. That's our in-person blended virtual option. We already exist. That's our students, they go into a cohort system where they come to school either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. And it's also HCPS curriculum. And it's the programs mirror each other, but again, there's some differences between them a little bit with the course offerings. If people have very specific questions about that program, that's where we ask that you reach out to myself or Assistant Principal Zach Lovelace. You can call here to the school, you can email us, and we'll get back to you, and we can give you the specifics of that. All your home schools, the middle and high schools, they're also pretty well versed in it as well. So you can also ask your assistant principal there, your counselors, and they can give you some information specific to that as well.
All right, and the next question, the AB rotating day, is that similar to Flex Friday?
No, it's similar to what, well, and again, Flex Fridays are running this year countywide, but next year when schools are in, the anticipation that schools are in session regularly 5 days a week, the way the rotation schedule works is, for example, week 1 could be Monday A day, Tuesday B day, Wednesday A day, Thursday B day, and then Friday A day. Then the following week, Monday and Wednesday are still A days, Tuesday and Thursdays are still B days, but then that Friday would then be a day. So they would rotate throughout the year.
The next question is, can you make this document available to parents? And I think I can answer that by saying that as soon as the application's available, we were planning on sending another communication via Connect 5, that if Principal DeLiva agrees, I'd be happy to attach that there, as well as I'm sure we can put that presentation on the website as well.
Correct. We'll be working on this tomorrow once we go through, review all the questions that were asked, and we'll try to condense it and make it as clear as possible in the Q&A from this session.
Can you put the elementary blended virtual schedule back up? That is a very specific question. And while you are navigating to that, I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the next question. What about musical instruments? Will the e-learning program support those?
In the beginning phases, we're going to focus on general music, and then we'll work from there. But we are going to start with general music with elementary and middle.
And the next question, what are your requirements for selecting students?
Part of what we'll look at is we'll look at how students, that were virtual this year did. If there were issues with attendance, if there were issues with completion of assignments, those are things we consider because we want to find what's the best fit for a student where they're going to have success. So those would be some of the things, and we can talk to administrators and teachers from the home schools if there were some other circumstances that pertain to that student. But it's all about finding the best fit for the student to have success.
All right, and the next comment notes that there's some confusion. She felt as though one slide showed lunch as 40 minutes, but the other showed it as 1 hour. Can we clarify that? Correct.
And so for the middle, whenever we were putting that that graphic together for the elementary school, it is a 40-minute lunch and it's backed up with recess. So that's where it looks like it's 60 minutes.
Will the students be allowed to keep their Chromebooks?
For yes, the elementary and middle school students will continue to use Chromebooks next school year.
Will the individual magnet schools be offering virtual e-learning, and where do we receive that information? I believe that would be a question for Mr. O'Brien. I do not believe that we would continue e-learning at the magnet schools, but I don't want to speak for you.
That is accurate. We would not have e-learning option for magnet schools or signature schools. It will be in-person options only.
Thank you. And the next question, are all students eligible for this program?
Yes, that is correct.
And we do have another request for a copy of the slides presented tonight, so we will definitely make sure that we make that happen. Mm-hmm. And what if we decide to apply later in the summer? Will we be able to?
First priority will be given to those that have them in by April 20th, but we'll continue to look at them. Again, staffing is driven by enrollment. So we have to make at some point a decision on how many teachers we'll have with the program. So if it gets to the point where it's later and we've exceeded what we're able to accommodate for staffing, then we could create a wait list from there. So if it's something that you're considering and you're serious about registering with, I would encourage you to do so earlier than later, because again, that is how we determine what staffing is actually necessary.
All right, we are up to 80 questions, so I'm going to keep trying to push through these. The next question, just to get it read onto record, is, are musical instrument instructions available to high school students? But I think that you've already addressed that question in the answer about instruments. And the next question, if a child is not accepted to the at-home program, where did they study? I'm not quite sure that I follow that, so let me read it one more time and see if you are able to. If we aren't, if the person, it's been anonymously submitted, if you can clarify in a follow-up. The question again is, if a child is not accepted to the at-home program, then where do they study? Is that in reference to if the student's application is not accepted, then what would happen? And my assumption is that student would remain enrolled at their home school?
That's how I'm interpreting that as well.
Okay. And that's a correct statement to say that they would remain at their home school, correct, Mr. O'Brien and Ms. Villarreal?
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you. The next question is, what are the factors that will determine if my child is eligible for this? Which I believe you have gone over. We may get a couple duplicate questions. I apologize that I'm not able to look through them ahead of time. So the next question, so once they complete Q1, they can go back to in-person at the regular school if I decide to.
Semester one. So a semester consists of 2 quarters, first and second quarter. They can reevaluate at that time.
And the next question was how many at-home days and online days, which I think you went over.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we pick up materials for virtual?
It would be at our building. So 253 Paradise Road, Aberdeen, Maryland.
All right, and then once more we got what qualifies a student for acceptance into the program. So I'm gonna move past that. How many students will be in an elementary classroom?
Best practices is we try to keep it at 20 or less.
Okay, and then the next question is, can students with special needs attend?
And that is correct, yes. We will have special educators on staff, so there will be case managers, just as any other school has.
And how is the blended program different from what we have now?
Well, with the e-learning blended from home, it will be, we'll put it this way, right now, elementary school students have begun to be able to attend 4 days a week. High school is not too far behind. They will be starting that up April 7th. But in this option, it will be strictly from home the entire time.
I think just adding to that, Mr. DeLeva, right now, teachers are still teaching in that hybrid environment. So our 53 schools will have students in person only. Teachers will be teaching in person, and then through our blended virtual program, teachers will only be teaching to virtual students.
So I'm going to read this next question word for word because I'm not sure if maybe I missed something early on. The question is, what provisions do you have for child with health respiratory issues where in-person is not an option during the pandemic? You mentioned being approved. I just want to clarify. And I can read that again if you need me to.
I think, well, the e-learning from home 100% would be a potential option for that student if they're unable to attend in person.
Okay, thank you. Can a child with an IEP enrolled in Living Skills program be eligible?
Okay, I will let Mr. Thatcher answer that one.
Good evening, everybody. While the exact programs weren't designed specifically for students with an intense level of IEP service, any students can certainly apply. We have had some students with intense IEP services do very well virtually, and what we'll do in the process is to consider, the IEP team will consider where the student has how the student has done virtually, and then also look at the services in the IEP and ensure that they can be delivered. And if that is all a yes, then that student would be accepted and moved on.
Thank you. And the next question is, how will gifted and talented services be provided? And they specifically note at the elementary level.
We're looking to hire a gifted and talented teacher, and they will be the driver of that program.
Okay, and then the next question, is the hybrid program just virtual learning, or is it also in person on some days? Maybe this person joined us a little late.
Correct. Yeah, it's really not a hybrid program. The e-learning blended virtual program would be where students are receiving virtual instruction from their teachers. It's synchronous, it's scheduled, and those students will be the only students that teacher is teaching to. So they wouldn't be teaching to students in person and at home at the same time.
All right, and it looks like we have a question about the name of the school changing. That is correct. It will no longer be called the Center for Educational Opportunity. And right now that there is an opportunity, the name change was presented at the Board of Ed meeting, so it's out for 60 days of public comment. So once that's finalized, we'll be sure to spread the word very quickly. So I'm going to move on to the next question. Now this one says, apologies if you addressed it earlier, what's the expectation for masking and social distancing for the 21-22 school year? And I don't think that that's something that we're prepared to address in this meeting about the blended virtual learning. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. If someone does feel as though they'd like to address that, just shout at me and I'll come back. The next question is for blended option where students attend the CEO for 2 days a week. Will parents have to transport students to the home school for bus services?
No, HCPS provides transportation for that. It's HCPS buses.
And the next question is, what will be the class sizes for both in person and at home?
So for at home, again, the goal is to target number is 20 or less. For the in-person, it depends on what our enrollment is with that.
And the next question is, are the kids required to have their camera on at all times?
I wouldn't say at all times. It is, there is a requirement that students participate, and there's a variety of ways to participate. If a student is asked to turn their camera on, it's expected that they do. It depends on what, the teacher will be controlling that aspect of it based on what the lesson is about, how the lesson is built, but students would be expected to turn them on when requested.
And the next question is a request that you elaborate on what no interscholastic sports means. They're questioning, does that mean that students who do this will not be able to participate in school sports like soccer, football, volleyball, etc.?
Correct. So we wouldn't have a team like, let's say, Bel Air High School. They have a varsity soccer team that would play Joppatown High School soccer team. We will not have teams set up like that to participate interscholastically. We will offer intramurals within that students can sign up for, and those offerings will vary throughout the year depending on the weather, depending on what sports what sports the kids show interest in and request that we're able to offer.
The next question is, we've recently moved to the area and did homeschool this year. Is my child eligible for this program as she has never actually been enrolled in HCPS previously and she's in middle school?
Yes, they're eligible, and if Mr. Hennigan wants to elaborate on that.
Sure, yes. So we are opening up the enrollment to students who are not currently enrolled with us so that they are able to register or apply, I should say. There may need to be a registration at some point prior to starting. Well, there will need to be a registration prior to starting at the new virtual school. But we definitely wanted to open this up to folks who may currently be on homeschooling, either through this past year or in past years, to be able to come in and access this this virtual program. So please, once the application process opens next week, please apply.
All right, and the next question, will there be an asynchronous option for K through 12?
No, there will not.
And what does appropriate placement mean when deciding if your student will be accepted?
Again, it's all about finding the best fit for the student where they're going to have success. If we find that they've applied to the e-learning blended virtual program from home, and based on the previous year, and if like I said, if they've had trouble attending classes regularly, having success with curriculum, and speaking with their homeschool, if it's determined that an in-person option would be a better fit, we would go with that option as opposed to the e-learning from home.
Okay, and then the question is, would my child who's in second grade have the same teacher for all synchronous classes? And would he have the same group of students he's working with for all classes, including specials?
Be able to give a more specific answer once we know what the enrollment is, but more than likely they would have the same teacher for I would say for the majority of their classes. For unified arts and things like that, that'll obviously change. It would be a different teacher, but otherwise, for the most part, I think be with their same classmates and same teacher.
Okay, this is another specific question. Would my 8th grader be able to take a level 1 world language like Spanish 1?
Currently, we don't have that in the offerings for middle school.
Okay, and will these be new HCPS teachers or ones with virtual experience from this year?
The HCPS teachers with virtual experience from this year.
Can they go in person 2 days, then virtual the rest of the week?
Not for the e-learning blended virtual program from home.
For those who want to stay home, how would standardized testing work? Can this be done from home also?
That is a great question. My interpretation of state requirements would be students would have to physically come in and they would take the test being proctored by our exams in an HCPS building.
And we have one more question again about, will this whole presentation be available later?
Yes.
And can a blended student participate in sports at his or her home school?
My answer, I believe that would be incorrect. It would be a no, because they would be enrolled at our school.
I was just going to say your home school is this school. So it's definitely a mindset change for all of us in the community. Are students still able to graduate off of stage? Not quite sure. You would still have a so in other words, would you have an in-person graduation?
Yes, we would plan to have an in-person graduation.
And what are the challenges to virtual learning that have been noted from the 2021 school year? I think that might be a question also that might be for a different venue, unless you'd like to address that.
I think student engagement is, probably one of the biggest ones, and that's something that our teachers are continuously looking for ways to get more of, to get the students involved, not just with the teacher but with each other within a class. So that's something that we will definitely continue to focus on going into next year.
Okay. If your child completes 1 quarter in this program, can they then go to in-person learning at their school? I think you've discussed that as well. And okay. If a student chooses the full-time in-person learning and their school closes due to COVID concerns, will they be switched over to virtual as they did this past year and remain with their home school? Correct, because we would not be enrolling everyone into this school if we had to go virtual. Mike, Renee, am I accurate in stating that?
Yeah, Jillian, this is Renee. I think you're right. I think, Mr. O'Brien, you agree too?
Yeah, I felt like that sounded right.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Slater.
My interpretation of that was if for some reason schools had to be shut down due to COVID next year, I believe the parent was asking if we would then enroll everyone in this program, which of course I don't believe that would be feasible, but that we would do the virtual learning and they would remain enrolled at their home school. Okay, the next question, are the same advanced and AP courses offered for virtual?
At this time, the list of courses that we displayed there for high school is where we will start. And at this time, we do not have AP courses as an option.
Okay, and we have someone filling in for their sister, and they want to make sure that they know where she can view this video. And of course, as soon as I get that video link from everybody, I will be sharing it out in as many places as I can. Most definitely the website. We'll send it directly to all families via the email next week, along with the application. So your sister should be able to get it there. And next question, are students provided bus service to the CEO?
When they are required to be here, yes.
How will differentiated instruction be handled at the elementary school level?
That's where, again, every teacher, I think, has their tool of tricks to use there. But that's where you can, make use of the personal learning time, the breakout rooms to individualize instruction at that point. This is where if you have, a co-teacher or if you're team teaching, these are also ways to differentiate and individualize to whether it be small group, individual, large group instruction.
Okay. I don't follow this question, so I'm going to read it word for word so that hopefully you do. If not, hopefully we can ask for some clarification. What if a parent feels the student is safer at home, but the app isn't approved? What are our options? Why is this application based?
I think that's where, if it's a case like that, or scheduling a meeting with the administration here, and we can work with that parent and try to find the best solution.
Okay, thank you. What circumstances does a child get accepted versus denied into this school?
Okay, and as I've answered this one a couple times this evening, and again, we're going to, when we look at an application, we're going to see how a student did this previous year. Again, if they had struggles, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't necessarily be accepted, but we're going to look at what caused those difficulties of, if they weren't having success in virtual learning from home this year, we would look at that to see if that would be a pattern that would continue, or if there's things that we can put in place that would help that student to have better success next year.
And I think this next question you've probably answered a couple times too, but I think if it's being asked again, clearly we need a little bit more clarification. So children enrolled in the blended virtual program will attend live learning at the CEO along with learning from home virtually?
No, again, there's two different programs, and tonight we were trying to focus on the e-learning blended virtual program from home. Students enrolled in that program, which is brand new for next year, would have their synchronous lessons with their teachers strictly from home. It's 5 days a week from home, synchronous instruction from home.
Okay. And Mr. Stifler, you are very welcome for addressing your questions. We appreciate them. You are correct. April 6th, the application will go live. He does ask, what is the last day to register? And also, is the registration fully online?
At this time, registration is set to be fully online. If there is an issue, if any parent is having an issue accessing that, they can just always call us here at our school, or they can email myself, Ms. Farver, Mr. Lovelace, and we can set up an appointment where they can come in and we can get them a paper application.
Okay, and how many students will be enrolled?
It's a great question. We're waiting to find out.
And it looks like this might be one of those clarification things. We have a question that says if they're attending a tech school now, will they no longer be attending the tech school next year? If you apply for this program and you are accepted, you will no longer be attending the tech school next year. You would be enrolled in this school. And how often will students be required to use their webcam? I think we've addressed that. What is general music? So no musical offering for high school?
For high school, it's difficult because it is very specialized. You have orchestra, you have choir, you have some schools have magical choir, you have piano lab. There's so many different branches you can go into at the high school level. It's so specialized. We're just not going to be able to replicate that next year. And Jillian, we'll probably have time for one more question, I believe.
Oh dear, I'm going to close the Q&A then. It looks like we've been standing strong at about 130. I'm hesitating just to make sure that if somebody's currently in the middle of typing a question. And all right, so I'm going to close that Q&A. Let's try one more time. The next, let me see, the next question is again in reference to AP classes, which I think that you've already addressed. There's also some questions about COVID mitigation for next year, but I don't believe that this is the appropriate venue to delve into that either. Do elementary kids get the option of attending in person 2 days and doing asynchronous learning from home the other days? It appears as though the options are full-time in-person learning or full-time synchronous e-learning from home. Is that correct?
Correct. The K through 5 option is strictly the e-learning from home.
Okay. Do we have time for another one? Can we squeeze another one in?
Yeah, one more.
Okay. Some of these are duplicates, so I'm trying to get a new question. How do high school students choose electives, or are there elective choices?
There are some electives, and that's where we'll work. We'll look at two things. We'll look, number one, especially if they're a sophomore, junior, or senior, we'll look at what they've already taken. But regardless, either way, they would work with their guidance counselor to put together a schedule.
All right, one more. We have 2 minutes. We can do it.
Sure.
How will this impact my middle schoolers' ability to later apply for a magnet program, specifically meeting math requirements for science and Math Academy?
I don't believe that would have an impact there. Again, we're offering the courses that middle schools offer. I know for now we have up to Algebra 1 for the middle school option.
And I think we've got, this one's a little bit different. How will social interaction be encouraged in a virtual environment?
There's a lot of answers to that, and that's where the teacher's creativity comes into play. Luckily, we've had opportunity to speak to quite a few teachers that are interested in continuing this teaching model, and we've heard many, like I said, great suggestions of how they've been incorporating that into their classrooms. So to give you a list of those, it would be kind of tough in the little bit of time we have, but that is something that the teachers will take control of on the daily basis within the lessons. And you can throw in, we'll have, the morning announcements, we'll have things set up for students, whether it be in person, virtually, to again encourage the social aspect of everything.
Okay, and we have one last question about my child did pretty well in person and virtual, but we prefer for her to stay virtual. Should we still apply?
That's a parent decision. You have to decide what's best for your child. If you need to talk through it with somebody at the school, I would encourage you to talk to your homeschool's teacher, counselor, administration. You're more than welcome to contact us to get more detail, and we'll help you make the best decision possible.
Mr. DeLeva, that puts us right at 7 p.m.
Okay. All right, so I'll let Ms. Pensero take over.
All right, well, thank you, Jillian, for jumping in and helping us with those questions. On the next slide, you'll see Mr. DeLeva's contact information as well as Mr. Lovelace, Ms. Farver, and myself. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. As Jillian had mentioned, we will be taking all of the questions from this evening's Q&A dialogue and putting that into a Q&A document for parents to view, as well as putting this recording on our website, as well as including it in an email next week with the application. So we just wanted to thank all you who've attended this evening to learn more about our e-learning blended virtual program from home, and we hope that you have a great evening. Stay well.